Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Jacqueline, and I'm going to ask you a very spiritual question. You ready? Okay. So do you believe in the female G-spot?
Yeah.
You do?
Absolutely.
You do, okay. Because some people do, but some people don't. They say it's a myth. It doesn't exist. It's like the Nessie of the vag. But after starting to work in a tantric massage parlour as a receptionist, I wanted to find out for myself. I wanted to find out about the female G-spot, and I wanted to experience Amrita, which is the Sanskrit word for female ejaculation. Yes, I wanted to find out for myself. So a friend of mine told me about this male tantric masseur, an amazing guy called Krishna Magic Hands. Oh, I know, magic hands, right? I thought, is he going to pull a fucking rabbit out of there? She told me that lots of women swore by him. Yeah. Mostly, fuck yeah!
I'll swear at him.
So, Krishna had an erotic temple. It was a basement flat in Earl's Court. But Krishna was a specialist of massage of the yoni, which is the ancient Sanskrit word for holy place. Earl's Court, right?
Yeah, right.
So the temple was very seductive on the website. And Krishna himself was gorgeous in the pictures, which were taken some time ago of someone else. I like to tell stories about my kind of mad life, really. You know, I'm a bit like Miranda on acid, you know, and I've kind of been out there and a lot of sort of journeys of self-discovery and self-development and personal experiences. And so I like to tell stories in which I talk about my experiences, and hopefully that helps people to talk about their experiences. And to bust some taboos along the way about things like female sexuality, because I don't know why is it we can watch a film in which like thousands of people are massacred, but we can't talk about the G-spot. A guy from one Fringe festival in the countryside, he was like, well, you know, why are people that live here, you know, in this little village going to care about tantric massage? And I'm like, I'm sure even the people that live in your village, I'm sure even the women that live in your village have a G-spot. It's a pretty universal phenomena. I think the experience that everyone has from their life, it's like their medicine. It's like, and each person is completely different, has had a different set of experiences, and is like a survivor that's come back from battle to tell the tale. Yes. And that is their teaching, their medicine to pass on. And so I like to be a part of that dialogue. And one thing that's been really interesting doing the show is that originally at the beginning, I talk about how I found out about sex. Finding a book on it, and that's the opening of the show when I was 10 years old, right? And originally I used to ask people how they find out about sex in the audience, and sometimes it went really well, sometimes it made them uncomfortable, so I've stopped doing it to open the show. However, what's happened is now after the show everyone comes up to me to tell me, so the same things happened, but in a less kind of maybe confrontational way. So it's not my job to be, it's not my, I'm not trying to confront people. I'm just talking about myself and, you know, opening up the opportunity that maybe they want to talk about stuff too.
I don't know if you came from a very reserved place to get to this place where you could be in front of a room full of people and talk about such intimate things. Was there a journey?
My background is I was an actress, and I did do a lot of comedy. I did improvised comedy, sketch comedy, and then I became a writer and focused more on writing. And I kind of got bored of sitting on my own, basically. And I went back into performing, and that's when I started doing stand-up. And I'd always been interested in stand-up, but I was too scared to do it. I had a massive phobia around it. When I did my first course with our teacher, Logan Murray, I developed this like weird eating disorder where I kind of couldn't leave the house, and I was eating these like 26p packets of Polish noodles. I didn't even know what was in them, so I couldn't read the packaging. And it was all this, and I was like, what can I fantasize? Who can I say's died to get out of doing stand-up, you know? Because I think to get to that place, because I think stand up for me, I like comedians that are very honest, but to come to a place where you're okay to talk about very honest stuff in front of strangers, I think you've got to be either you've got to be okay with yourself, or you get quite fucked up, and some, people are, and they're self-medicating or whatever. But hopefully we can do it from a place of being ready to talk about what's happening to us and share it. It took me to be at a place in my life where, I was sort of okay with myself and what my journey has been, to be able to talk about it. And some people might not like it, and that's fair enough. That's their prerogative, But I wasn't ready to do that when I was, in my 20s, for example. So I think that...
still were.
Thanks. Soft focus. And I think that what has sort of blown my mind about stand-up is you say the most personal thing about yourself, like your neurosis, your physical, what you perceive as your physical flaws or your limitations, or the secrets about yourself, of your sexuality, or whatever it might be, your physical ailments that normally you wouldn't talk about. And not only do you talk about them, you exaggerate them for comic effect, right? And then what happens is, hopefully, people laugh, which means they can relate to it. So it's like the irony of, by saying this really personal stuff, actually becomes very universal, because otherwise people wouldn't laugh. Do you know what I mean? They didn't relate to it. So that's, to me, the paradox of stand-up that I love, and how you can go and see, like, if I saw your set for 5 minutes, by the end of it, I would know all about you. I'd know about your stomach conditions. I'd know about your marriage. I'd know about, because it's such a raw art form, and that's why it's both scary and thrilling. I think that human creativity and comedy and humour as a part of that will spring up everywhere. It's like weeds that push up through the pavement. It doesn't matter what conditions you put on human beings, their creativity and their humour will always come through it. And maybe that's why we've been given humour as a sort of species, as a way of coping with the tragedy or the struggles of life, as well as with the great stuff, because comedy is all about failure. Comedies are all about losers. Charlie Chaplin said that life is a comedy in long shot and a tragedy in close-up. So even if you take the classic routine of someone falling on a banana skin, if you're in long shot, you can laugh at it from a distance. If you're in close-up, you're like, oh God, they've hurt themselves and now they've got back problems, and who left that banana skin anyway there, and you see too much of the details. So you need that level of distance to be able to laugh at things. But that's the sort of power of comedy. For me, that's the alchemy of comedy, that you can take the worst things that have happened to you or be in the worst situation, and you can transmogrify it. You can alchemize it into something really entertaining. So I give you an example. Last year, I was lucky enough to facilitate a comedy writing workshop in a men's prison. And these were quite hardcore guys, And as I came in, I was sort of shaking their hands, and then one of them had his hand on his nuts down his trousers. I'll be like, okay, so we don't have to shake. Let's start with the group. The guy introduced me, the guy organising it, who's the writer in residence there, who'd invited me to come, and he introduced me, and immediately one guy got up, stamped out of his chair, stormed out of the room and slammed the door. And I was like, well, that's the response my comedy normally gets. But after that, they were all fine, and they loved it. And we wrote a sitcom together about their experiences in prison, much darker and much more hardcore than Porridge, And they were bringing out these extraordinary situations, and it was amazing. And the atmosphere in that room, the vibration was so high, you forgot where you were. When you went out on the wing, it was quite heavy. I'd never been in a prison before, not even as a visitor, right? So to walk around on the wing, it's got quite an intense energy. And so, but in this room, it was a really high vibration and a really fantastic, exciting, creative, everyone working together. So I believe that creativity will push through no matter what the circumstances. I believe it's a very deep creative thing. And I'm reminded of my father, who was a very witty guy. And we were on the way to driving him. My mum was driving him to the hospital to have his operation for cancer, and a hospital that he would never leave. He'd never come out alive. And anyway, we're driving along, and he suddenly went, stop the car. My mum stopped. She was like, what is it? He said, "I've forgotten my tennis kit." And that's gallows humour in action, making jokes right to the end. So I don't believe whatever cultural positions you put on people, I think creativity will always come through. It might not get a chance to be published or performed out loud, but even if it's just people standing around making jokes and telling stories to each other.
Like tonight.
Like tonight.
Yes, just allowing it to be aired. Thank you so much. Fabulous.
Thank you.